Lord Jesus Christ according to John.
Glory be to thee, O Lord.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and not without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him. Yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood, or the will of the flesh, or the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified to him and cried out, "This is he whom I said, he comes after me, ranks ahead of me, because he was before me." From his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. The law indeed was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known. The gospel of the Lord.
Praise be to thee, Lord Christ.
Well, Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
As you recall, Christmas is 12 days long, not just one day. And Jared's going to tell you more about the 12 days of Christmas next Sunday at 10 a.m. at the study class. So, tomorrow, 2 days after the celebration of Christ's birth, the church honors its first martyr, Stephen, the first deacon of the church. That kind of bothered me when I was ordained a deacon, when I thought about that, a long time ago. Well, Stephen, a brave, faithful, and committed follower of Christ. He set the tone for Christian sacrifice eternally by forgiving his murderers, just as Jesus did on the cross. Well, let's think about deacons for a little bit. Deacons are one of the four ordained ministries in the church. Lay persons are ordained for their ministry through baptism. Deacons, priests, also called presbyters, and bishops, with each have calls to particular ministries, just like we did at our baptism. Deacons came about very early in the life of the church, as described in the book of Acts. There was a need to take care of the poor and the widows who couldn't support themselves. The apostles were busy with the ministry of the word, preaching, praying, teaching, and healing. Now, in order to respond to those in need, they decided to appoint and lay hands on Stephen, along with 6 others of good reputation. Bottom line, the apostles really needed help for those in need of the bare necessities. This was the very beginning of the vocational diaconate. not transitional deacons who are ordained a deacon and serve a period of approximately 6 months or longer and as a deacon. Then they are ordained as priests. Stephen was the very first vocational deacon, exemplifying the ministry of bringing the needs of the people to the church, for the church to respond to. Now, I want to be very perfectly clear about servant ministry. No one, absolutely no one, is off the hook. It's a basic component of our job description as Christians. Jesus charges each of us to respond to those in need. Those called to vocational diaconate have a specific call to bring the needs of the world to the church and encourage the church to listen up. And that is the core of their lifelong ministries. A vocational deacon has to have an identifiable servant ministry. That ministry among us calls us to respond to the needy, those unlike us, and deacons are under the direct authority of their bishop, who appoint them to churches with priests to serve as their supervisors. So, what does Deacon Stephen have to do with the gospel before us today that describes Jesus' baptism? Stephen took his baptism seriously, and I'm not talking literal baptism, I'm talking baptism by God. And he loved his neighbors as himself. So I think we should take some time to look at the gospel and review the first chapter of John. In it we hear the Word. Jesus was the beginning of the Word. In the very beginning, the Word that was with God, and the Word was God. And the symbol of John's gospel is an eagle that soars to the heights and has keen vision. The symbolism is very appropriate to the opening verses of the gospel. And that those opening words sometimes can sound totally complicated, causing us to respond, say, what? Well, John's focus is on making us use our minds to think. He borrows the term from the most sophisticated thought of his time, Jewish and Greek. It translated to the Word. This term has a rich history among ancient civilizations living on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. It does not mean simply word in our ordinary English language. Instead, it means at least three things. First, it refers to the structure that underlies the universe, what holds everything together, what makes things work. The Word is like the glue that somehow unites all aspects of our wonderfully complicated universe. This is the part, what John means in today's gospel is making reference to the Word, the universe. Secondly, it's not what it has in this Word, in the Word by itself. But the Word ought to deliver the divine law and intentions. Human beings are noticeably not obedient, yet still we understand there is a law. All people recognize this, however imperfectly. So the way we are meant to live is part of what John is suggesting in making reference to the Word. It has to do with meaning and purpose. And the question that haunts probably everyone and every human heart is, what's it all about? John's focus is the precision of thought rather than the richness of imagination. He borrows this term, the Word, from the most significant thought of his time and his contemporaries. And he makes impressive assertions about this word. The word is not made for some moment in time, but always was, is, always was, always will be. The Word is with God, and the Word is God. The Word is the creator of the universe, and this Word, both life and light. John appeals to our minds, unlike the other Gospels of Matthew, Luke, who appeal to the heart. So then, allow your imagination to be delighted by Matthew and Luke's beautiful stories of the first Christmas. Let your minds be enlivened by John's announcement that the Word has become flesh. Let your hearts and spirits be warmed by the most beautiful story the world has ever heard. In that way, we can become whole with minds, hearts, and spirit united. When we strive to bring the Word to life in our hearts and to share it with all that we meet, God says to each of us, "You are my child, my beloved, and with you I am well pleased." Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.